Listen to your breath.
Please welcome author, humorist, and your bedtime storyteller, Dylan Brody.
Comedy of manners. Ellen sipped her scotch. Paul turned his wineglass slowly on the paper cocktail napkin, spreading a spilled drop into a red circle. I don't know why we couldn't have chosen someplace nicer, Ellen said. She said she wanted to buy us dinner, Paul said. I was trying to be polite. Still, we could have gone somewhere decent and then insisted on picking up the bill. This is decent. You know what I mean. You mean you prefer the 18-year-old McAllen to the 12? Ellen gave him a look that meant, you're not at all funny, and then said, this is Dewar's. Then, responding to his apologetic shrug, they have 12 and 18, but if she's buying... We really are very decent, polite people. He sipped his wine. Is she late? We're early. I should have gotten the McAllen and paid for it separately. You still can. Too late. She didn't quite nod toward the front door of the restaurant, and Paul, on the sidewalk beyond the glass, moving toward the door. He read the body language as best he could, but there wasn't much to go on, and he could never tell the difference between chilly and irritable anyway, or needing to pee. In hushed tones, a hurried whisper, Ellen said, don't push her about grad school. Lindsay came toward them, and then Paul was up out of his seat to watch her approach. He took in her coat, slouchy soft in a way that suggested it had been expensive originally. He imagined her out there in Los Angeles going through the racks at thrift stores, keeping up appearances. She looked thin, too, fit. He opened his arms and she hugged him affectionately, smelling of shampoo and autumn. Ellen remained seated so that Lindsay had to lean over her shoulder to kiss her, and Ellen returned the kiss awkwardly, patted a conveniently placed hand, and gestured for one of the empty seats at the foretop. Lindsay said, actually, can we... She turned to a passing waiter. Can we move to that booth in the back? Is that going to mess things up for you guys? Oh, that's fine. Let me just... He looked at Lindsay, saw something in her demeanor that altered his tone, and said, I'll let your server know. He hurried off as though he'd been sent on a very important errand. Ellen stood up and collected her drink. Paul lifted his coat from the back of the chair where he'd draped it, grabbed Ellen's coat as well. Would you grab my wine, baby girl? It's okay, Dad. They'll bring it over. I don't like to make extra work for them, would you? Lindsay sighed a sigh that held in it a lifetime of tiny battles lost, tiny points conceded. She picked up the wine. She also picked up the circle-stained cocktail napkin to avoid that additional moment of dialogue. Ellen was already on her way to the back booth with a forced cheer in her gait to indicate a false lack of irritation at the displacement. Lindsay and Paul followed. They settled in. So, Paul said as an opening probe, you're in town? Yes, just for a couple of nights. Working? Yes. Is this a television thing, Ellen asked, or one of those other things? What other things? Sometimes you do those other... What do you call them? You know what I'm talking about, Paul. Borging or something. Blogging? Lindsay asked. Right, those. I was a blogger for 3 years, Mom, for a travel site. I know you read at least some of the posts. I did read some of them. You know, on the computer, when you sent me the things to click on. Paul winced. The links? Right, the links to the blogging. All the new language. It really is something. Anyway, I only read them on the computer. You know, where you scroll through and read all the text and see the pictures and it's all just on one long page. As opposed to what, Mom? Well, you know, I didn't go out and try to find copies of the, you know, the actual thing. Ellen. What? Lindsay said, what actual thing? You know, the magazine or the little booklet or wherever where they were really publishing this stuff. What? Oh, come on now, don't be like that. I read all the ones you sent me the clicky things to, Paul said. Links. Right, sometimes I even left comments. Yes, you did. Right there at the bottom. Did you read those? Yes, I did. I remember once I typed, this was really well written, thanks for sending it. And sometimes if there were little mistakes with punctuation or grammar, I pointed it out for you. Yes, I remember. 'Cause, I figure if I can help in any way. Yes. Paul said, "You did that in the comments section?" "Sure. That way she could fix it maybe before it actually got published or printed or whatever." Ellen, "What?" "I'm not doing that anymore. I'm here with a location shoot." Ellen said, "Isn't that wonderful?" A waitress approached the table. She introduced herself. "Hi, I'm Signe. I'll be your server this evening." Ellen said, "You already told us that." "Yes, but I was introducing myself to the other young lady." "Hello, Signe. I'm Lindsay." "She doesn't need to know that, honey," Paul said. Ellen pulled down the last of her scotch and then crunched a bit of ice in her teeth as she slid the glass toward the waitress. Signe did not respond to that. "Can I bring you anything to drink? Have you had a chance to look at the menu?" "I haven't. I'm sorry. Do you have any herbal tea?" Signe listed some teas and Lindsay chose one. Then Signe turned to Ellen. "Would you like another Dewar's?" "Please." "Not Macallan?" Lindsay asked. "Oh, that's not necessary." "Bring her a glass of your oldest Macallan, and if the bartender grumbles about putting it on the rocks, tell him that when he can afford good scotch, he can decide how he wants it served." Signe said to Ellen, "We have a 25-year-old. "Oh, that's just absurd. 18 is fine." "Okay." Lindsay said, "Bring the 25." Signe left them alone. "So you're shooting a location," Ellen said. "We're shooting on location. Have you seen the show?" "What show, honey?" Lindsay blinked slowly. "I told you about this. In an email. Last year." "About what, dear? You know I don't understand half of what you say when you're talking about work." Ellen patted her daughter's hand. Paul waved to Signe as she approached with the fresh scotch and pointed at his empty wine glass. "Served cold. TNT? Thursday nights?" Ellen said, "Oh, I heard about that show. You remember, Paul? What are we talking about now?" "That show, the one Stacy Keel was going on about the other night. And on NPR we heard about, what's his name? Oh, help me out here, Paul. The guy with the funny inflection." "Bander Sujanmati." "Yes, that's the one. He did a whole piece on it about how it's so violent and angry." "Oh," Paul suddenly said, engaged. "I remember that review. He compared it to the whole Quentin Tarantino thing in cinema and talked about how it all started with Kubrick's The Shining. I love this line. The celebration of our darkest impulses, the repeated affirmation of an underlying hostility, a fundamental violence at the heart of every family." "Yes, I don't know how you remember whole chunks like that." "It struck me when I heard it, I remember." "It stars that woman, I think, the one who used to be on that other show, the comedy. We never watched that either, except the one episode you wrote. Do you remember that, honey? You called us all excited because you'd sold one episode to this ridiculous sitcom on network television." "Show Me the Love," Lindsay informed her. "Yes, I remember." Paul said, "You were so excited to be getting into the guild." "Yes." Ellen said, "And then we tried to watch it and we just couldn't even sit through the whole half hour. It was just such utter schlock. I mean, I'm sure you did a wonderful job of writing just what they wanted, but it was all those corny one-liners and then the big fake laughs from the studio audience, just ridiculous." "Okay." Paul said, "But you were so excited about selling that episode and getting into the guild. I remember that. What was that, 3 years ago? 4? Signe put Paul's full glass of wine on a fresh new cocktail napkin. She put a small tin of steeping tea beside a teacup for Lindsay. She paused for a moment, then said, "I'll be back in just a minute to take your orders, okay?" Paul waved her away without looking. Lindsay said, "Thank you, Signe." Lindsay's phone made a small noise. She ignored it. "So what have you guys been up to? Dad, you have to be starting to think about retirement." "I don't want to talk about it." "And yet he does, several times a day, usually half a sentence grumbled into the refrigerator." Paul sipped his wine. He crinkled his eyes in a way that told both Lindsay and Ellen that he was about to say something but wasn't sure how it would be received. "Lindsay, I want to say something. I'm not going to graduate school. That's not what I was going to say." But then he didn't go on at all. Lindsay poured tea into her cup. She waited. She sipped. Ellen said, "You're not drinking at all now?" "I have an early call in the morning." "To whom?" "What? Who do you have to call early tomorrow?" No, that's what time I have to get to work. It's called a call time. Oh, Paul said. We don't really know all the lingo. I know. Abruptly, Paul blurted out in an oddly scolding tone, "You know we love you, right?" "I do. Sometimes I wish you could love me with, you know, less hostility." Paul chuckled. "I get that." Ellen said, "I still drink." "Yes, I see that." Ellen said, "Your father really only drinks wine, but I just love scotch. Mostly only in the evenings." Mostly? "Sometimes on the weekend if we're playing Scrabble, you know, and it's the afternoon." "Ah, Ellen," Ellen said, as though she was answering a question that nobody had asked. "Never more than two." "Okay." Ellen said, "I know my limit. That's how I know I'm not an alcoholic. Just 2 drinks and no more. If I have too much, I fall down. Literally. One time I went to sit on the toilet and woke up on the floor of the bathroom." Paul said, "Good story." Lindsay said, "And this is how you know you're not an alcoholic?" "Don't be like that." Ellen stood up. "You know what I want, right, Paul? You can order for us. I'm going to have a cigarette while we wait for the food." She made her way to the front door. Lindsay and Paul sat in silence for a moment. "We're missing something, aren't we?" Lindsay nodded. "It doesn't matter, Dad." He said, "I don't know what you want from us." She shrugged. "It'd be nice if you said you were proud of me." "Oh, honey, we are so proud of you. We tell people all the time about how wonderfully you turned out. We might have made some mistakes as parents, but you are incontrovertible proof that we were not completely incompetent." Lindsay chuckled. "Is that what I am?" "What? Proof of your competence?" "I don't understand." They sat in silence for a moment. Her phone made a noise. She reached into her purse and fished it out. She swiped through the combination to bring her screen to life. She began scrolling through texts. Paul said, "Don't do that." "What?" "Look at your phone in the middle of a conversation." It was actually the middle of a pause. "Still. It's not 5 o'clock yet in L.A. I'm still working, Dad." "You're at a restaurant with your parents." "Well, one of them." "It's rude. Put it away." "Rude? Your wife just walked out of the room to have a cigarette. I waited until there was a pause, and now I'm checking through a great many texts, some of which I really should have responded to when they came in." "Really? You're so important that people in LA need you to get back to them right away when they text you in Boston?" "I'm not on vacation, Dad. Yes, they need me to get back to them." "Oh, stop it. You're just avoiding talking to me." "Ooh, now who's overestimating their importance?" "What?" She finished thumbing out a response to the texts and put the phone back into her purse. Ellen returned in a small cloud of eau de parlement. "What did I miss?" "We had a fight." "Ooh, exciting. What about? Did you offer to pay for grad school?" "I told her it was rude to look at her phone at the dinner table." "Oh, your father is right about that, dear. I read about it in the advice column in the paper. It's not Dear Abby. I don't remember her name, but someone wrote in about that, and she said that it's very rude, very common now, but totally unacceptable." "Is that what you read about in your print medium newspaper, Mom?" She heard the defensive anger in her own voice. "What does that mean?" Lindsay sighed. "Wait, I remembered something when I was outside. You started saying something, and then we got sidetracked. Something about that awful show on the Dynamite Channel." "TNT. Not the Dynamite Channel." "I know, dear. I like to call it the Dynamite Channel." Lindsay waved to Signe, who came at once. "Are you all ready to order?" Paul said, "My wife and I would like to split a Cobb salad. Is that allowed?" "Of course. Do you want that all chopped up and mixed to make things easier?" "Oh, do it the way you usually do it. I like it when it's all fancy in the separate wedges, and then I get to mix it up myself," Ellen said. "Okay. And for you?" "You know what? Do you still have the bisque?" "I love the bisque. Would you like a cup or a bowl?" "Terrific." Signe jotted it on her pad. "A big bowl. Does it come in extra large? Do you have a tureen of bisque that I could order?" Signe laughed. "One venti bisque. If the bowl's not enough for you, I'll bring you a second one and only charge you exactly the same amount for that one." "Wow, you made that sound like a bargain. You're awesome." "I strive to not suck." Signe smiled as she collected the menus. Ellen finished off her drink and handed Signe the glass. Could I have another one of those? Of course. Signe went. Ellen seemed to respond to an accusation. Oh, come on, the first one was just doers. Ellen? Ellen turned to Lindsay. I wish you wouldn't do that. What do you wish I wouldn't do? Make jokes with waitresses like that. What kind of waitresses should I make jokes with? You know what I mean. Stop being funny. Everyone finds it exhausting. Lindsay closed her eyes in a way that suggested that she had a terrible headache, although she did not. She opened them again and sipped her tea. Paul said, So, is that what you're working on? What? That TNT show, Cold Servings. Served cold. Yes. Oh, I didn't realize you worked on that show. Ellen tapped the tips of each of her fingers with her thumb nervously. I know. I got that. What do you do on it? It doesn't matter. Just let's eat and talk about something else. Are you upset because I said what I heard on NPR? That wasn't my opinion. I've never even watched the thing. Yeah, got that. Signe set down a fresh drink for Ellen. Paul sipped his wine. Are you upset because we never watch it? A little, yes. Because you work on it? Honey, I didn't realize you worked on it. Ellen's inflection implied that she believed her words were an apology. I sent you an email when it went to pilot, another when it was picked up. I know, honey, but I really don't know what all of that means. So, Paul said, you've really been with this thing from the beginning? Yes, the very beginning. I can see how that feels important to you, baby girl, but it's still just a TV show. No, it's not, Dad. It's not just a TV show. It's my show. It's my series. We're out here shooting a bunch of location scenes for the second season. We're picked up for a second season. My show. Ellen said, Oh, don't be pretentious about it. So you work on a show. It doesn't make it yours. I'm not. It is my show, Paul corrected her as gently as he could. No, it's that woman from the other show, that comedy. She's the star, Dad. I created it. I executive produce it. It is my show. Signe brought the salad and the bisque. She put down an extra plate so that Ellen and Paul could split the salad. Ellen set about mixing the salad together. I love this part. As Paul moved some of the newly mixed salad to the extra plate, Ellen sipped her scotch. Paul said, We really don't know what any of that means. I pitched a show. Then I wrote the pilot. Then I sold the show. Then we made 22 episodes, of which I wrote 9 while overseeing the writing staff that wrote the others. Ellen forked lettuce with a fork. Well, I think it's great that you're working, but I don't think that's the kind of thing you should be bragging about. I mean, don't put this cold justice thing on your resume. Served cold, whatever it's called. Ellen. He said it while looking at his daughter. Then, this is the thing, isn't it? The thing we were missing. Lindsay nodded. That's a big deal, selling and running a show. Lindsay nodded. I don't even see how you would know how to do all of that. Ellen, it doesn't matter, Mom. She blew on a spoonful of bisque. Seriously, though, honey, I think it's great that you're making a living doing this TV stuff while you're working on your real writing and whatever, but you shouldn't tell people you're working on that awful show. Paul sighed. Why's that, Mom? Because nobody likes it. Apparently it's very violent. It's consistently beating out the big 3 networks in its time slot. Well, that doesn't mean anybody likes it. Actually, Mom, it means that a lot of people like it. Well, that doesn't mean it's any good. A lot of people thought Milton Berle was funnier than Jack Benny. A lot of people liked the Stooges more than the Marx Brothers. Okay, Mom. I hope you're socking away a lot of money in the bank so that you have something of a cushion and you can just relax when that show is over and you can do your real writing. This is real writing. It's television, Paul said. It's been called innovative television, and we're getting terrific ratings. We got picked up for a second season. She heard her voice getting higher. She heard the plea behind it, the need to be heard, to be recognized. Her father said, Well, I suppose that's the sort of thing people in L.A. would be very impressed by. Then, after the shortest of beats, I don't know what you think you need my approval for. Lindsay sighed. She pulled bisque into her mouth, focusing on the sound and then sensation of the warm broth. Paul said, "Don't slurp, baby girl. It's very rude." "It really is," Ellen said. She signaled the waitress that her glass was empty. Listen to your breath.